Great. Okay. So hello everyone and welcome to our second Nextmuseum IO meetup on mapping the cartographic from Collective Rewilding. My name is Alina and I'm the project manager of Nextmuseum IO. So if you have any questions or feedback regarding our platform, other open calls or events, you can just contact me. I will put my email address in the chat. And before we start, just a hint for you that we will record the session for those ones who can't make it today and will watch the replay. So if you don't want to be visible, just turn off your camera and you'll be fine. And also please turn off your microphone while the others are talking. Great. So Sarah, Sabina, and Amelie, I would say the stage is yours.
Thank you, Alina. Hello, everyone, once again. I'm going to share a presentation with you, so you will have something to look at while I'm talking. So I am Sabina, and I'll be hosting and moderating our meeting today. I would like to welcome you all to our second meetup. And first of all, I would also like to thank everyone for joining this meeting, and also thank Nextmuseum and Alina for organizing and hosting it. I'm, as I said, Sabina from the Collective Rewilding. However, the entire team is here today with us. So hello, Amelie, and hello, Sarah. Make sure to, pose your questions if you have any questions in the chat, and the two of them are going to take care of the questions. So today's agenda. This is our second meetup. Some of you have maybe missed the first one. You can find the link for the first meetup in the website, the website of Nextmuseum, or on our Instagram. We have several things that we want to discuss today. First and foremost is to give you a short feedback on the open call submissions, because this has been a question that has been arriving every now and then on our Telegram group and also on our email. We also want to give some details about the venue of the exhibition, about our host, Drugo More, and the DM gallery. And we have also decided to give a chance to some of the artists to present their work. So we will have 3 artist talks. Today joining us are Imandato, Mateusz Montanari, and Monica Dodniak. After we finish with the artist talks, the idea is to have a short Q&A session. And again, if we manage to do it with the time that is, we want to be done in like an hour. So if we have the time, we will then address the questions. If not, we would keep the questions and address them in the following weeks on our Telegram group. So we can start with open call submissions. As you might have already seen on our Instagram, our website, or the website of Nextmuseum IO, through the open call, we have received over 150 submissions, and we are very grateful for all the work that you shared with us. This work that you submitted gave us a lot of interesting new narratives and ways of addressing the theme of the exhibition. And it is also very important for us to let you know how until now we have not made any decisions regarding the final selection. So the plan is to have the final list of artists who will be joining the exhibition by the end of this month. So basically by the end of March, we will hopefully have the final list of artists who are joining the exhibition. Many of you were asking this, so let me just shortly address the question. We have been featuring some of the submitted works on our Instagram, on our website as well, and we also have 3 artists who are presenting here today. They are only selected as their work shows the variety of ways the topic of the exhibition was addressed. So we selected them to present today, but this doesn't mean that they have, made the cut and how they're joining the final exhibition. Other than that, it is very important to let you know how the plan is to select 10 to 15 artworks, depending on, of course, on how big and complex the works are, and also having in mind the budget that we have for the exhibition. We are at the moment in the process of fundraising for the exhibition, and this will be, of course, playing a major role in the final production of the show. So once again, thank you everyone for submitting your works. Just 1 second, what's happening? So thank you everyone for submitting your works, and yeah, just stay patient while we finish our selection. The details of the venue. This is a very exciting moment for us because we have partnered up with Drugo More, which in English means the other sea. And our partner for this show is based in Rijeka in Croatia. And I will use this time to shortly introduce them. So Drugo More is a non-profit organization from Croatia that is working since 1999. And they are very interesting because they identify and explore topics of social relevance and general interest to the local community. Which makes us very happy to partner with them, as this is in the core of our curatorial discourse. Drugo More is working locally, but also regionally and internationally, with an idea of showing interdisciplinary work and with the aim of connecting artistic program with discourses in science and cultural theory. Drugo More, in a way, believes that art is an important cognitive tool, and their program is aimed at addressing this. They're creating and facilitating an exchange between the local and international community. They always host a lot of artist students, and at the core of their activity is the production of visual and performing arts and research in the field of culture, as well as organizational, participatory, and educational events such as conferences and events. So now that you have an idea of who Drugo More is, we can also talk about the gallery. So on the picture, you can see the building where the gallery is located. The gallery has two names, so don't be confused. It is either Gallery DM, which is Drugo More, or Galleria Filodrammatica. Filodrammatica, the Galleria or Gallery Filodrammatica is due to the fact that the building itself is called Filodrammatica. And so in a way, it's always the same space, but it has two different names. The building is a 19th century neoclassical building that is actually a very important national heritage site for Rijeka. They have been working, Drugo More has been working within the Filodrammatica Gallery since 2002, and they have organized a number of shows, events, conferences and seminars. You can take a look at their website. It is a very big and impressive list of names that you can find there. I just, wrote several artists who you can see on the list who presented their works there. But what I find very interesting and what works well with us is the fact that they do a lot of collaborations with curators, and they are not unfamiliar with working in collaboration with curators, guest curators who come to the gallery and work on site. Here I presented, I put some names of the curators who collaborated with Gallery DM already, and we all love superstars, so you can also see who are the big superstars who presented their works in the Drugo More Gallery in the past, let's say, 19 years already. Wow, that's impressive. Here is the gallery plan. So this, when you see the plan of the gallery, you can then kind of understand why we cannot choose more than 10 to 15 works. It is a total of 93 square meters. The gallery plan is 93 square meters, but you can see that the left wall is opened. And if you take this floor plan and look at the picture above, all of these windows are actually one wall of the gallery. So that means that we are either losing one wall, or if we have a nice budget, then we can, you know, add a lot of interesting things and create new niches in the gallery. I also prepared a number of pictures of different exhibitions that were hosted by the DM gallery, so that you can have an idea of what are the possibilities of the gallery. So here is the empty gallery, without anything in it. It's a very nice space, very clean, with, as you can see, a lot of windows that can be covered and used in many different ways. This is an exhibition that was organized in 2016, I think. It is an exhibition called Yesterday is Cancelled, Tomorrow is Irreversible by Oliver Ressler. As you can see, they use the space for a lot of video projections. Later, you have interesting installations that can be organized in the space. So here we have the installation Who Does What of Silvio LaRusso. And here I actually took this picture, but I'm not sure what the exhibition is, but it just shows you how not only one people shows solo exhibitions or big installations can take place here. This is a group show, and it is important to understand how even in group shows and group exhibitions, every artist, every work gets very nice. Okay. This is another, just an interesting pictures to see of what the production possibilities of the gallery are. And last, this is an exhibition that just opened this month, last month. And again, it's a big show that is called The Red School, and it's a historical exhibition, but you can see how the windows are covered, and these new curtains are actually part of the exhibition. So that is about the gallery and our collaboration with Drugo More. And what we have planned for you next is the artist talks. But before we get there, I hope that this little short presentation on the gallery made you a little bit more excited about the show. It sure made me excited, because I feel like with the space we have a lot of possibilities, and it is going to create a lot of new ways of showing works. So in the next part, we're going to have Iman Dato, Matheus Montanari, and Monica Dorniak present their work. We decided to give them the opportunity to present, as we feel like their work shows three very, very interesting positions and ways of looking at the open call questions. For example, Iman is looking at cartography from a non-human perspective. Matheus is giving us a very interesting research on how cartography can be made. And finally, Monica is using mapping as a tool to address intergenerational trauma. So that is all from me. I now invite Iman to start her presentation. And of course, everyone else who is in this meetup, if you have any questions during the presentations, just share them in the chat.
Thanks, Sabina. I'll just share my screen now. Okay. So hi, my name is Iman. I'm an architectural researcher and spatial storyteller. And today I'll give a short introduction into my practice. Economic Botany, which is a parallel botanical institution. We explore the many methods of mapmaking that exist beyond our human-centric depiction of worlds, to ask what happens if we represent space, not relative to the human, but relative to one another. Our ongoing project, Freeing the Potato from its scientific and colonial ties, uses mapmaking to challenge and destabilize the way we categorize, order, and arrange plants in the botanical garden. But why the potato? So the potato, a colonized specimen, is subject to a typical hero story. It was a reward reaped by conquistador Francisco Pizarro on his expedition to Peru in search for gold. But in that journey, the significance of the plant as a whole was erased, as are the nuances and knowledge systems that surround it. The result, a spread of potatoes emerging from a narrow genetic bottleneck, and a nomenclature to represent our movements across territories, borders, and bodies, as shown by this early research map, illustrating the use of spaces in economy and ecology to alter the inertness and agency of certain beings and bodies, and create the distinction between human and non-human. So despite there existing thousands of names of Andean names of the potato, we have reduced this to just 50 domestic varieties in the Western world. Our domesticated language unable to ascertain the potato seed's teaching of survival through variety and difference. A pursuit of progress-time relationships has resulted in the loss of knowledge of old practices in relation to cyclical time. This drawing, for instance, shows the seasons of potato cultivation according to cosmology and Andean rituals. Meanwhile, here is a 14-year cycle of creating a new cultivar in laboratories to achieve the perfect French fry. But now it is time to remember, I am more than my tuber. I'm also my seed, my flower, my fruits, and my roots. So indigenous botanists and cartographers practiced long before these sciences became political tools to advance a singular mode of thinking that placed the human at the center of its worldview. The economic botanical garden acknowledges the malleability of botany and cartography to go beyond empirical truth and reason, recognizing that maps of tactile, cosmographic, visual, mnemonic, and other forms are used around the world to disseminate a more tacit reading of scale, time, and place. So now I'll take you on a little immersive experience, and with this pot, we'll find a portal from Kew into the site of the economic botanical garden, following the potato into a power amorphous landscape devised to cultivate new map-making practices. Centered around a ceramic vessel which defines the garden's spatial and social arrangement, we work radially outwards to grapple with 4 fundamental questions posed by the potato. And our seed cartographer will respond with a series of cartofacts that defy Cartesian map-making principles of drawn, immersive, tactile, and oral qualities, just to name a few. 1. Who are my friends? You have placed me in the family called Solanaceae, using the tree of life as a symbol to match me with other plants that share the same anatomical features, governing how you organize your order beds, such as this one in Kew. But if I were to be placed with my family, we would fight for nutrients and spread disease. Notice how here in the economic botanical garden, channels are marked not by trees, but by rhizomatic structures, as symbols of my intertangled relationships between kin. I have found my place amongst the soil and the earth, rooted comfortably beside lettuce and spinach, sharing a network of nutrients with corn and green bean. I'm aware of a potato beetle hovering north of my territory, but the catnip, coriander, and tansy manage to stop the contaminant. The woody scent of sage and the leaves of nasturtium act as a magnet to the aphids, and the ladybird in the southwestern zone diverts their attention away from me. I have explored my contaminants and collaborations to develop a new categorization system by kinship and personality traits, sorting plants into roles of compassion, protection, intelligence, and foundation. We reveal how these kinship ties contradict groupings of the plant tree of life and uncover the multiple ways of ordering nature. 2. Where are the wild ones? You have a good understanding of alpine wilderness, the tough, hardy plants that grow above the tree line and below the snow line in temperate zones, marked by distinct seasonal changes. These are environments you attempt to mimic back home, emulating their form and landscape in miniature rock gardens, such as this one at Kew. World of wild alpine plants is known in Maine, but have you heard of my home, the Paramo? I'm one of 234 wild ancestors of Solanum tuberosa. Here in Paramo, we are not known for our flowery flash, but our brightly colored flowers, transported by carriage in the spiky pollen sacs of the Bombus robustus. Here I take root in multiple ecosystems, such as the high grasslands of Cusco, nestled beneath the Queen of the Andes, sheltered from days which feel like the hottest of summers and nights the harshest of winters. I thrive in soil types that are black and saturated, but also dry and xerophytic, taking root in the sandy clay soil with Coreocactus odysseus, in the canyons of the Yanco Cunca, and at the edges of field borders and forgotten agricultural terraces. I cling to the side of mountaintops in the highest of altitudes in carpet-like mats with stipa ichu. We may not be tasty, but we are tough. Here we shift scale to meet eyes with my grandfathers in the Paramo, to explore how external environmental conditions influence plant anatomy and disease resistance. Instead of producing botanical illustrations that map plant physical and morphological features, we draw soil types, atmosphere, light intensity, among other features that influence my diverse set of mechanisms for disease control. So those were just two of many questions posed by the potato within the virtual world of economic botany. The other maps that exist, such as the one on the screen, can be explored by my entry on the Mapping the Cartographic site. So to summarize, economic botany is an educational resource that in its process of construction asks us to embrace the contradictions of living in multiple worlds. To enter the economic botanical garden defies empirical knowledge, allowing for numerous readings, times, and memories to occur in one dreamscape or world. The maps communicate like stories as tools to offer a sense of the memory codes outside of one's own immediate environment. Unlike Q, the economic botanical garden is an indeterminate body with no end, boundary, or border. The landscape will continue to mutate in two ways. One, it adapts through the extension of existing channels, relying on multiple authorship to extend outwards. So collaborative ways of working with communities, artists, architects, ethnographers, and the institution and the public will establish the support networks required to extend this living resource through workshops and public events. And two, it goes through the introduction of new nodes. So from the potato, we could expand our attention to a material such as rubber, or to a disease or a particle, connecting further sites in Q to a set of new pots in the landscape in channels that overlap and intersect. So to reiterate, what is important here is not to create a finished and archived set of artifacts or objects in a landscape, but a generative resource that encourages and learns from the multiple channels for recording human relationships to nature, with hope to make room for more sustainable practices within and beyond botanical institutions. And we have a series of workshops coming up soon, so please do make sure to follow us on our Instagram at Economic Botany to take a look at how to take part in those if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. This was really, really good. Just one second, what happened here? Next, we have Mateusz with the Algorithmic Landscape presentation.
Hello. So just share my screen with you, just a second. Okay, is it working? Yes, okay. So first of all, I would like to thank the collective Rewilding and the Nextmuseum for the invitation and for the organizing these meetups. I think this kind of action really opens up the experience of the curating process. And I'm really happy to be part of it somehow. So I will be presenting a project that's called Algorithmic Landscapes. And to summarize very briefly, this project proposes to investigate the algorithmic dimension of the landscape, subverting artificial intelligence algorithms in order to create poetic content. So what that really means, hopefully, will be clear by the end of my talk. So a little context about myself. My name is Matheus Montanari. I am an artist from Brazil, and I work with art and technology. I'm a member of the Digital Poetics Research Group that is coordinated by Gilberto Prado, who is also my advisor. And I'm just starting my PhD at the University of São Paulo, where I also did my master's, and this project is actually part of my master's work. And besides that, I have a bachelor's degree in digital technology. And I also studied for a period in the Fine Arts Faculty of Lisbon in Portugal. So that's my background and where this interest from art and technology comes from. And now I will be discussing a few concepts and main topics about the work. And then in the last part, I will talk about the most practical part of it and the process of making it. So what is the landscape? Usually when we think about landscape, we think about something that's a bit far away, something that we can observe, maybe a beautiful beach or a mountain or a painting or even a background where something takes place on. But that's absolutely not what I'm talking about in this project at all. I'm borrowing the landscape concept from of Tim Ingold. And he says that the landscape is not a background where the action takes place, much the opposite. The landscape itself, it's something in the order of action. And to explain it a little bit better, but I'm not sure how useful it will be, I made this drawing that you can see in the screen. So in the landscape, as I've summarized, we have three main elements. That's space, time, and actors, represented here by the letter A. So each actor has a different vector T for time. And for example, one of these actors could be the weather, which changes from time to time. Another actor could be the mountains, which also change, but at a geological temporal scale. It's much different from ours. So another actor could be us, people. And finally, another one could be a technological one, such as the algorithms, which operate in a very fast velocity. So for an easier picture, when I talk about algorithms here, we can imagine any GPS application that traces and suggested routes. And so all of these actors acting are creating agency in this network. And they are affecting each other at the same time that they are being affected by them. So space is not closed or crystallized. It is constantly actualizing itself. So that's the landscape in action, always becoming. And with this approach, we intend to get out of the dichotomous relationship of nature, culture, or technology nature. And we want to embrace an ecology that is also an ecology of machines, as in Yuki. So Yuki proposes that in the world we live today, to think about biodiversity is not sufficient anymore. And we need to also think about techno diversity, or even better, techno diversities in the plural. Well, obviously technology has a global aspect to it that's really important and very connective. But where we are failing, according to Hui, and I agree, is in exploring the local qualities of technology, its usage and impact. Moreover, Hui asks, what would be the decolonized scenario of technology today if each civilization had the opportunity to develop its own technology instead of adopting a hegemonic system? So the Algorithmic Landscape project goes in this direction. It applies the same algorithmic methodology in two different cities that are Paris in France and Caxias do Sul in Brazil, which is my hometown. So this project proposes a different way to explore and map the city by a psychocartographic, experimental, and algorithmic derive. And this project consists of 3 iterative stages that I will be presenting in the next slides. So the first part of the work consists of a performance where I do an algorithmic derive in 2 different cities, Paris and Caxias do Sul. And in both cities, I follow the same methodology, subverting a music suggestion algorithm into a route tracer. So I start walking and listening to the suggested playlist. And if the algorithm is right and suggests me a song that I like, I turn the next corner right. And if it's wrong and suggests me a song which I don't like, I turn the next corner left. And during the course of this action, I make a time lapse of the way and I record everything in the GPS application. After doing that in both cities, I take each frame of the time lapse and I pass them through another artificial intelligence system. This time one that I created specifically for this work. And what the systems does is that it takes the images of one city and searches for the most similar in the other city. So this way we force the algorithm to create an approximation between these 2 geographical and social distant places. With these pairs of images, we print them in acrylic sheets where the pigment doesn't dry completely. So then we can join the images of the different cities. And because the pigment is not completely set and the acrylic sheet is transparent, we can see the image that emerges between these 2 places. And that's what we call the algorithmic landscape, as you can see here. With these images, we are able to create several works and ways of exhibiting them. We worked with video, with a video mapping in a building facade. We also developed an interactive installation and even a web art piece where a browser extension makes intervention in specific websites. So one thing that I like about this project is that it gives us the opportunity to change for each time it's going to be exhibited. So basically that's it. I know it's a lot of different process, but if you're interested in learning more about it, there's a video essay in the collective Instagram page that explains more detail, with more detail. And that's it. You're welcome to get in touch with me, and that's my website and my email. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was really interesting. Then we have Monica next.
Thank you, Sabina.
Thank you.
I'm also going to start my presentation. Oh. Thank you for the introduction and opportunity to present my work. In my short presentation, I would like to talk about my project, Past Pieces Merging with What I Call Now. This project consists of a short film and a wearable sculpture and a written piece of work. As in most of my works, this piece is not only an assemblage of different media, but also a result of a multidisciplinary and multi-layered research. This combines my personal biography with my interdisciplinary research in psychology, philosophy, and natural sciences. In my work, I'm interested in the wide range of cartographies. This goes from the microscopic level, such as the first forms of life in the sea, that we evolved from to the macroscopic level, such as geopolitical borders that are artificially defining the concept of a nation. I'm specifically interested in the way that throughout history, non-human and human agents have become subject to marginalization and were forced into certain forms of violent contracts that our recent society and our environment is still built on. This is something that also I'm looking the political theorist Angela Mitropoulos writes in her book, Contract and Contagion, which I'm very interested in. In this context, I'm interested how those past cartographies that were separating people into categories have led to the inequalities that we are still facing today. This is, for example, something that many people refer to as in capitalism, but to clarify, I also want to refer here to the concept of capitalism that has not first arose with the industrialization, but already the time of witch hunt, as Silvia Federici claims. As a Polish-German artist, I'm using my biographical material that has been passed on to me through various generations. Many of my ancestors had come partially from Lithuania, Ukraine, Belarus, and have fled to Poland, but also from the German side, have experienced war and displacement. I perceive my whole body as a collection of maps that are fluid in their existence, but are also partially turned into stagnated forms, such as in the example of trauma. In 2012, I've started my research in psychology and neurology, which further led to my research and work with dancers. With the discovery of neurons, as from the scientist Ramon y Cajal in the 19th century, we have until today learned that our whole body is a versatile and constantly changing network that stores memories. However, such a network also stores negative memories, or in other words, also trauma. This can be inherited over the generations and lead to nightmares, fears, anxieties, and generations to come. In my work, Past Pieces Merging with What I Call Now, which I developed in 2020, I invited my friend and performer Susanna Ritz to interpret my score and research. My work with performers is another form of mapping, in which I build together with the dancers a form of community that unravels the past together to find ways of reclaiming the bodies. Like me, Susanna grew up in Germany with a Polish heritage. This is a hybrid state which partially led us to alienation, but also to the heightened awareness of the maps that define our bodies, but also nations and gender. My research on the complex maps of the human body started with my multimedia project, The Human Anatomy is Adorning Itself, between 2009 and 2011, in which I reflected on the subject of identity and questioned what a self is, except of its social projections. The textiles in this project function as reflections of the multi-layered skin that stores and erases and creates memories. Throughout the past years, I've carried my research further and treated the act of reclaiming the self as a form of political activism. I shared these workshops in different countries, such as Palestine, where specifically the students were actually experiencing this form of nations and borders in a very personal and direct way because of the Israeli and Palestine conflict. So in that sense, my personal biography of the Polish and German side has become like a way to teach the students that are now in the situation to handle basically the subject of trauma. I claim that the understanding of our body maps and cultural maps goes hand in hand with the formation of a self that can resist the forms of manipulation. In such a way, I think even that to understand the impact of trauma on our breathing and respiratory system can be a first act of reclaiming our personal maps that have been dictated by external bodies throughout the history. So my work, past pieces, merging with what I call now, is like a puzzle piece for an attempt for me to understand the human body and the impact of like external factors throughout history on both the collective on a very personal level. So to finish off this short presentation, I was wondering, I don't know if we still have time to show the video, or are we good?
How long is the video?
4 minutes, but I could also share it as a link in the comments so that people can look at it, because that might be easier also.
Okay, you can do that, and also you can share it on Telegram. That's always a way to.
Yeah.
And also, I think you can also show the video. We have time.
Great.
Schemes and maps, once tailored by those that were
Monica, we don't see the video. We only hear it.
cartographing a
Let me see.
I think you have to stop screen sharing and then share the video.
Another window.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, this works. Can you see it now?
that define myself. Memories are laying silently in our bones until a sensation awakens them. Collapsing the fragile concept of time and space. Past pieces merging with what I call now. Imagining what my ancestors' silenced experiences could have sounded like in the words that we share. At times, a memory overwhelmed me in a far from equilibrium manner, as if my ancestors were calling me not to forget in how far they have contributed to the formation of self. My body memorizes the occupation of the lands that you were standing on. Borders dissolving within the development of a globe, announcing a new form of freedom. In the unread footnotes, it was defined as a new form of choreography that equalized the movement of our physiology and psychology to connect us while distancing the relation to ourselves. Imprinted into an anatomy that is ours are the synchronized gestures that were reformulated in systems of time, using the same idea of control over those who stand here and those who stand there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Now, thank you everyone for your presentations. You saw maybe in the chat we were getting a lot of praises for your works, and this just shows how difficult we have it as curators, as we have 150 such amazing works. If you have questions now to address some of the ideas that came up through the presentations, you can write them in the chat. Otherwise, again, I invite you all to join our Telegram group and just have a conversation over there. You can exchange your views, your ideas, your practices with one another. And that's why we find this Nextmuseum platform very, very interesting, because it creates not only, you know, it's not just curator-artist relationship anymore. It becomes a platform where everyone is joining the discussion and the exhibition making. So I'm looking at the chat and I actually don't think there are any questions. But I do have a question for the three of you, maybe just shortly, so that we can then finish on like a question and answer thing. My question is, how did you come to mapping? Why is mapping something that you use in your practice? Who wants to go first?
So the project I presented today and the practice actually began in my 5th year of architecture. So I didn't come into arts practice through a traditional route. I studied architecture where I kind of struggled with the idea of mapping, because we always map things according to space, but never time. And I think that kind of understanding, or that curiosity as to the many different forms of mapping that exist beyond the ones that I was being taught, is what kind of initially got me into it. But also the idea that it wasn't like with a project that kind of dealt with botany, it's not just plants that are being categorized and ordered and arranged through the colonial project, it's also space too, and kind of trying to understand what the distinctions between the earth, the underground, and the cosmos mean, or those divisions and lines that we create and those borders that we create, and just finding alternative ways of visualizing them and kind of thinking about how it is not the purpose of a select few to be creating maps. So I think within my practice, I also try and ask who is doing the mapping and why, which I think is one of your questions. And for me, I believe non-experts are the ones who should be mapping, and that maps are not there for truths, are not just there for an aspiration to a truth status, but also there for us to explore like alternative connectivities as well. So for me, as being a non-expert in botany, it was a way to ask maybe sometimes like naive questions as to like how the plant world is organized and arranged, as a way to kind of start to think of alternative systems of arranging as ones that maybe contradict the way things are currently being done. So that was kind of a long answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel related also partially to that. I mean, mine is maybe also personal in that sense that I grew up in Germany, but we always traveled to Poland. And it was as a child already that I was reinforced this concept of borders, because at that time, the Polish border was also still having controls. So constantly going through these border controls as a child was something where you become aware that there's a separation of some kind, but it's quite abstract. And I think that had a big impact on my identity, but also my practice, and working on topics with psychology and the constant body map and dances also is something which kind of brings me further into these maps as you said, Iman, as a way to ask myself who actually creates these maps, who decides, first of all, who decides the borders or the cartographies, but also who decides what a body basically is and how we claim ourselves basically back this idea and concept of this. So I think it's something personal, but also now throughout the years, I've worked a lot with different people who have fled from different countries. And then I become more and more aware how strange the concept of maps is, because until now, our recent society, there's a very small percentage of people who are in power who decide basically which countries are safe, which countries are in war, and which people therefore basically have to flee. So I think it's a very important subject we all have to think about on one hand, to have the privilege of living in certain maps that are safer. On the other hand, also to think how such a privilege can be used also to help others.
Monica, I'm sorry, Mateusz, just we had a question for Monica. You can all read it. It says, from your perspective, does the cartography of the self necessarily match the mapping that they inherited, or is there space for variations?
That's a very interesting question. I thought I wanted to keep the presentation short, so I didn't really go into this, but I want to, I think for me, it's important that trauma, in that sense, like for me, inherited trauma doesn't necessarily define a destiny of a person. I think that in my workshops that I do a lot with dancers, I'm more interested actually of how this inherited trauma may be part of our identity. But I like to use the word reclaiming a lot. It's a popular word also in this political context nowadays, to basically reclaim the body and the identity as a self as we want it to be, and as we want to see our gender identity or anything. And I gave that example with the breathing. It sounds like a very simple subject, but I think that I've met many people throughout the past years that experienced trauma that are actually quite alienated of their breathing. So breathing can actually be a form of a first attempt of actually connecting again with the self, and thereby making more space for something. I think that actually what we inherited, the maps that we inherited, we should also be always critical of this. So I don't want to romanticize the idea basically of inheriting these things, because in parts, especially as a woman, I have learned that it's very important to reflect on basically what are these inherited things and how do they limit my space, and then how far do I have to actually free myself through this. So yeah, it's important to perceive the identity as something fluid that we also are in power of changing.
Thank you, Monica. Mateusz, we still have you to answer the question about why do you use mapping in your work, and also I really like your idea of techno diversity. So if you can also kind of put that into the answer as well, would be amazing. Thank you.
Sure. So I think as Iman and Monica have put already, one of my interests in maps is mapping as a power tool, and I think that's something they already talked about very well. So thank you. And but also I have two other reasons why I started using maps in my practice. And one was because I can't go anywhere without a map. I don't have any sense of space, and that's something that I feel like it restrains me a lot to follow these, especially now with like smartphones and GPS, to always follow the most efficient way to one place to another. And I wanted to try to explore the space in a different way, but without losing this kind of tools and not the technology. I think we are in a place now that we cannot deny any sort of digital technology because they are everywhere. We need to work with it, maybe against it, but somehow we need to still work with it. And also the map for this project, actually, it started in a very different perspective, where I was researching about skin and I don't know the English word for it, but I think it's dermatoglyphs, the lines that we have in the skin. And I wanted to try to create something that would be kind of like this collective skin, where these lines could connect each other. And I started to realize that a map or a city is kind of like that. It's this collective body of lines that are connecting people, place, and everything that's happening there. And so about techno diversity, this is a term that Yuki Hui develops, and I think it's really interesting, especially being from Brazil. That's not an hegemonic place that technology is created, or even for us to have access to certain types of technology. Sometimes it's hard or it takes time. And being an artist that works with technology, I know like how hard that can be. And as we look back in the history of mankind, we can see that we've always been using some sort of technology, you know. So I think it's really interesting to think about the different ways that technology could have been developed in other places, and how it has actually, and we don't know about it. So I think techno diversity, in a sense, is a way to empower these other ways of dwelling and these other ways of living. So that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you again, everyone. Just to sum up, I would like to just give an idea of how through these three presentations, we kind of saw how, you know, technology can define landscape. On the other hand, how the human and non-human perspective can also be used as a tool for map making. So it is a topic that can be addressed from many different perspectives. And I really appreciate everyone's work that was done in the field. I would also like to thank you guys for presenting today. It was amazing, very well prepared, and we learned something new. And I think we are done. It's almost 6 o'clock. If you have more questions, you know, email us. You can reach out through Telegram. We are all open for, you know, conversation, communication, and just, you know, stay tuned and follow everything so that you can find out what are the next steps in the process. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And also, if I can say a couple of sentences, if that's okay, Sabina? Okay. On Thursday, we have our next tech time, since we already touched the topic of the intersection between art and technology. And this time we will talk about art and artificial intelligence. And it will be with the Paris Collective Obvious. Some of you might know it. And they actually do create art with artificial intelligence, and also with the artist Noura Al-Badri from Berlin. And she kind of uses AI to question the power structures of Western museums. And at the next time, she will talk about the activation of artifacts through technology as an emancipatory and decolonial strategy through several artistic interventions. And I will just post the link in the chat, and you can also see it on our website. Great.
Great. Maybe we can just repost all these links from the chat in our Telegram, because I feel there were a lot of links that were coming in. Okay, thank you, everyone, and have a nice day, afternoon, evening. We are in so many places around the world, so have a nice rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Alina?
Yes.
Do you have access to the chat after the meeting?
I think, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I should have, yes.
Because I just made a suggestion without thinking if that's possible.
Yeah, you would, but maybe just to be sure, we can copy it as well. But I think it's accessible via Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
for organizing.
yeah, thank you for this